Hey everybody, Pat Benage here, the Evolution Coach, creator of the 6-Week Shift, the Inner Path, and this inspirational blog, SoulTalk. And welcome. Finally we have a really beautiful day out today in Central Oregon here. And finding that I'm getting a little lesson this morning that's coming from a little bee. Who, when my partner Madeline opened the door this morning, flew in and has been making this concerted effort to get out again, except we've got a very tall room in here and windows that don't open that are up high, and he or she is trying to get out through that upper window that there's no way out. And so what's the lesson in that? It's interesting because what came through to me is that it's so typical of us as human beings sometimes to continue to try to do things in a way that just isn't working. And no matter how many ways he tries to get through that window, it's not possible. It's just not possible. It looks like it should be to him. Looks he can see through it, so he thinks that there's a way through, but there's this essentially invisible barrier that doesn't let him through. It doesn't let him through. And what occurred to me is that in those situations where we have our own invisible barrier, sometimes we need to just shift perspective, and sometimes we need to, for example, he's going up, and in our typical idea is that progression is an upward cycle. And so in order to get through, we've got to go up, we've got to evolve upward, we've got to move upward, up and forward. And so that's his direction. And oftentimes that's our direction, is we want to go up and we want to go forward. And yet the simplest truth is that what he needs to do is go down. and there's the way he came in is through the doorway that's down below. And the only way he's going to get out without encountering his own demise is to go down and back out the way he came in. And so sometimes in life, that's our truth as well. Sometimes in life, we have to take a step back, or we have to, move back down in order to get through whatever it is that we're encountering, so that we can get through that invisible barrier that's in front of us, and then go up. Then the sky is the limit. Then we have the ability to move in any direction we want. But First, we have to give up, we have to surrender to this idea that this is the way, that the way we've chosen is the way. And it's just our, we get this idea that we're just doing it wrong. We need to get through that. We can get through that, but we just have to find the opening somehow. As this bee goes around exploring every piece of that window to try to find his way out, ultimately, it's going to show him eventually that he can't get through that. And in life, for us, that's also true. We continue to try to, beat our heads against the wall in order to try to get through that wall, and until we've exhausted all possible ways to get through sometimes. Wouldn't it be nice if we could recognize that all we really need to do is step back and take a look at what's going on. Take a look at what's in front of us. And maybe we can see around it. Maybe we have to see underneath it. But there's always a way to move forward. It's oftentimes not the way we think. And when it's not the way we think, rather than trying harder, rather than, continuing to bash our head against that wall, maybe it's just better to step back and relax for a moment, take a look at it, and, get a different perspective. Sometimes it requires getting somebody else's perspective. Sometimes you can do it yourself. Sometimes you can just step back and relax, and it's kind of like the whole I can't see the forest for the trees thing. And so if you get out of it, you can kind of see, you give a clearer view of your path. But sometimes it requires somebody who has a completely different perspective that will open you up to shifting your own. If you can try to look at it from the other perspective, maybe there's an opportunity to see a different way. And with that different way, a path forward, a path upward. And I think the only means by which we can do that sometimes is really getting out of our head. Because when we're thinking, and we're in that thinking mind, and ego's it's invested. As soon as you make that choice, ego's invested in that choice that you made. And then it becomes almost a challenge to get through it. And I'm going to do this no matter what, kind of thing. And so I think sometimes the only way to get beyond that is to surrender that stubbornness, to admit that there might be something you're not seeing. That, and you either, ultimately we all, when I say surrender, we're surrendering to the higher self, to that inner master, that inner wisdom, to the essence of who we are that knows all of it, that knows the truth. Because the mind and ego don't. They think they do, but they don't. The soul is what knows. And so the mind has to surrender to that inner wisdom. And sometimes, in order to get to that, because the mind sort of thinks that it is that, sometimes in order to get to that, we need a bridge. Sometimes we need a bridge that helps us to make that transition from this perspective we're taking right now, and the one that will allow us to see past, see a way through. And that bridge usually shows up in the form of a teacher. Maybe that teacher's as simple as a little bee. And maybe that teacher is someone who's been through that, someone who's gotten past that, and knows the way. I know in my own life, I have been that stubborn bee that just was convinced that he knows the way out, and he's just going to keep at it until he gets through that wall, that window, because he can see that there's something on the other side that where he wants to get to. Never mind that it's impossible. And I had that same mentality for a long time. As I made my way out of my depression and into a happier place, more at peace, I did that for the most part myself. I mean, certainly nobody's alone in this, but a great deal of the work I did myself, and I took pride in that. And I believed that I could take myself to the ultimate level on my own. That was my experience, is that I could do it myself. And that I had to do it myself. That was part of it as well, that I needed to do it myself. And to some degree, that's true. But it's not completely true. I mean, I did read books, which helped me to, for the most part, it was reinforcing what somewhere deep down I already knew, or drawing that out of me. But it was still guidance. It's still the same thing. It's still a bridge that's getting me, past that. And then, once I had been able to incorporate all of the information that I read into my life and the way I lived my life, I still found that there was this barrier, this invisible barrier that I didn't seem to be able to get through. And I felt like it was something I could do. And in truth, the only way through it, I have to do it myself, but the work is always mine. But that doesn't mean I couldn't use some guidance. I couldn't use somebody pointing me in the right direction. And it wasn't until I surrendered to that idea, that I surrendered that stubbornness of mine that said, not only that I can do it myself, but that I will do it myself and that I must do it myself. And said, that's true, but I can only do that if I am my whole self. I can only accomplish that if I become everything that I'm capable of being. That I become my higher self. And for that, I needed help. For that, I needed guidance. For that, I needed a teacher who had gotten there, who had lived through that, had made it beyond where I was. Because there's a limit to how far one's own mind can get you. There's a limit. And I discovered mine. and I lived in that place, in that limit, for a while before I said, okay, I'm willing now to accept that somebody else might know more than me, might have experienced more than me. I mean, in the ultimate truth, we all know everything that we are, but we're not aware of it. So it's more awareness, I guess. Somebody that had more awareness than I had, that could see more than I could. And so that's my message today, is that, unfortunately I can't communicate with that bee to tell him that he needs to go down, point him in the right direction to get out. He's going to have to figure that out on his own, so he doesn't have a friend in here who's been there. But if he did, then he could just follow that. And so my message is to let go of the idea that you have to do everything yourself. If you come into that place where you feel like you're beating your head against the wall, maybe before that. If you could be aware of it before that, that's maybe better. Trust your own self and your inner self, and it is true that you can do it, and that it's your responsibility to do it yourself. But be willing to seek higher truth from someone who has experienced that, who has reached that higher truth. And then, I mean, the only way you can know for sure if what someone else tells you or what is they're speaking is a higher truth is by testing it yourself. And then you know. You know, if it doesn't pan out, if it doesn't test out, then fine, you just move on, you're no worse off. But be willing to listen to your own inner voice and let it guide you to that help that you might need, that guidance, that someone to point the way. And don't be too stubborn to do that. Don't be too stubborn. It's made a big difference for me, and I know it can for you. If you're in a place where you're feeling like there's more and you're not quite able to access it, seek someone else's point of view. If it doesn't resonate with you, let it go. That's okay. If you need to try a few to find one that resonates, that's okay. But be willing. Be willing. So, thank you so much for joining me again today, and I hope that you will take a moment, if this has been of value to you, to like it, share it on Facebook or Twitter or wherever. Go like my Facebook page. And I appreciate your help in helping me spread the message and spread the word. And I just appreciate you for being, for being here and letting me express my truth every week. So thanks so much. Remember, live your life from the inside out. And we'll see you next week.